Okay, artists. Well, here we have a piece of sandpaper. I'm just going to cut off a chunk of it. Now, this is a pretty rough, coarse grit. It's an 80. So the lower the number, the coarser the grit, right? And so when I was doing things like sculpting stone, I would start at like a 60 grit, and then I would go all the way up to 600 grit sandpaper. So, sandpaper. I'm trying to see if this will be an easier way to hold on to this, because sometimes this sandpaper can slide around from you. Wow, that works pretty well. What we're going to do is go through and definitely bring up as much of the white as we can without removing too much of our crackle. I mean, look how cool that crackle came out in there. And then look on this guy. It'll be interesting to see what happens because we have so much of that color underneath. I'm going to squirt just a little bit of water on this. That's why, to bring out that shine. Look at where we mixed the gold and the copper paint in there, or crackle. Like, wow, so cool. This one, can we say Gustav Klempt or what? Holy smokes. Look at how beautiful that is. Man, oh man, oh man. I love it. I think it's a really cool technique to make these inner spirals really pop. Now, of course, we can't stop here. That would be travesty to stop here. Let's, I don't know what that says. Oh, it must be, oh, that's a mess. Okay. I keep my old ones around. This is the Timber Brown Stays On. We're just going to try a little side swipe here before we go over everything. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring in the smaller archivals. I'm going to build up the colors. Let's start with the sunflower. So you see how that's just lightly changing that color. This sunflower ranger, this is actually a Windy, I don't know her last name, color series. You know, it's one of their Wooded Rangers designers. This is becoming very leather-like now, which I love. I love using this sunflower color again with the gold crackle. I think they're very complementary to each other. Now I could go back through and sand this down again, but I do like that it's kind of covering up some of those green spots, which actually we're going to come through with some of this leaf green. Let's see what this does. Yeah, this kind of gives it, again, just a more antique feel to it. So we're slowly adjusting the color instead of completely. We're not really leaving a lot of the white from the texture paste behind, but the texture paste, you can definitely feel the difference, you know, from the crackle to this. Next time doing this again, I would make the texture paste be a thicker, thicker put it down thicker. Here's some cactus flower. Now I realize that putting purple over green is going to give us kind of a browny color. And I want to try to avoid too much the center. Somewhat. I want to avoid somewhat. So, you know, you can just use just a vintage color with this. I prefer to kind of build up the colors. I've used these colors enough that I know how they react to each other, which is why it's great to, you know, find your favorite supplies. We're going to lightly brush this. Now, the reason why I'm using the smaller ones is so that it doesn't go into all of the crevasses. Sometimes the big ones you just don't have as much control over, and I like having control over this. This is giving it a really beautiful mahogany feel. Again, taking that leather feeling and accentuating it. I want this to feel almost like an old fortune card. Yeah, that's actually what I'm kind of going for. So again, this forget-me-not has had a lot of blended colors on it. I'm just going through and accentuating. Trying to give it more depth, more contrast from the gold. So you might think it's crazy to, you know, keep kind of building up these layers, but instead of just using one solid color, I personally think it makes a large difference if you kind of take your time with your color building and you're selective about it. All right. I like that dark color. I think we got that from the timber brown. So I'm actually going to pull in some of the cobalt, which is one of my darker colors here. We are not looking to cover up everything that's underneath at all. All right, what I'm going to try to do here real quick is this is alcohol, straight isopropyl alcohol, as high of percentage as you can get. I think mine's like a 97. I'm trying to see if this helps to bring this out a little bit, or if this is going to just put the ink down into the cracks, which I'm kind of going for. Trying to make our gold more gold. It's kind of blurring it a little. Now we can do this to make some water spots. And by letting that paper crinkle, we're also letting that ink decide where it wants to go. This through here is phenomenal. This through here, we need to touch up some of the darkness. It took a little too much off. That's really amazing. Can you see a book cover in that? You know, that's why we do smaller pieces of art, is to really test our supplies and see what we can come up with. I can easily see a book cover done in this. God, even on that leather I have. That would be amazing. Right? Yes. Okay. So. Oz, you scared me. I'm going to cut this up into our 2.5 by 3.5 inch squares. That is our next step, I think. All right, guys. So what I've done is I've gone through and chomped all the corners, and then I took my StazOn and I edged all of the corners. Now, the reason for that is because I think it gives a really beautiful finish to the little piece of art. I mean, this is a piece of small art. There is no doubt about that. I did that here with the ATCs also. I mean, look at how cool that crackle paste is in there with that. I mean, super, super cool. I really, truly love how these have turned out. I mean, that just looks so vintage. I'm really, really considering doing this without leather. I might have to test it out before I do it. Yeah, just do a small section. So here is my crocodile corner chomper. We are memory keepers. I like using the smaller one, the 1/4 inch side. Super easy to use. Works out really well. Do you have to have this specific corner chomper? Well, of course not. Use what you got. Use what you got. That is the key. Look at how cool that piece of art is. I just dig how those have turned out. Then we just run it along with our permanent ink. Now, you don't have to use StazOn, but I would highly suggest using a permanent ink. Archival, something that has an alcohol base to it instead of a water base, right? So if it says pigment, it's a water-based, not a permanent. So just things to remember. Ranger, of course, has both the archival and then just the regular inks. So just watch that. The reason why I don't like to use regular inks on the edges is, of course, because it can come off on your hands. Not that these are going to get overly used, so it probably doesn't really matter all that much. It's just a personal preference. It does take a little bit for those edges to dry. So if you're stacking stuff, just be aware of that. So these, I think, are finished. And I will let the artists decide what they want to do with these. Again, these are getting sent out to my $25 patrons. You know, this one, it's still really cool. I just can't quite get it to where I want it to be. So I'm going to send along another piece here with this one. Look at how cool that is. So to whomever is the recipient of this one, you'll get a second piece. I just cut these up into different sizes so that I can make tags out of them or whatever. Just little pieces of small art. That's all they are. Anyways, but yeah, that one has had kind of an unfortunate. You know what happened? What happened was the texture paste was not elevated enough. I didn't put on a thick enough amount right there. So when that happens, the permanent ink went down into the cracks. So, you know, that happens sometimes. Not every piece comes out perfect. However, this thing is still pretty darn cool. And I think it'd be a shame to throw it away. So I think what would be great to do is to layer things with this. I mean, can you imagine that as elements in our books? Or, you know, we're just building. We're not only building ATCs. We can be building, you know, things for our stash. Oh, wow. Yeah, just that little bit of finishing on that edge makes all the difference. Okay, so now what am I going to do with these guys? These are the ATCs that I'm going to be sending out, which I've got to get them in the mail tomorrow. It'd be really bad if I'm the one person that is late. It'd be really bad.